If you are waiting for a screen to lock before you react, you are already lost. Everyone thinks ransomware is encrypted files and ransom notes, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Ransomware is not dead because attackers failed. It's dead because attackers evolved. Traditional ransomware, everyone thinks about encryption, disruption, noise, but what it has been replaced with is far more dangerous. It's encryption like extortion. Attackers are now breaking in quietly. They are stealing your sensitive data and then weaponizing regulatory compliance like GDPR, HIPAA, PCI. They don't need your log files. They just need to own them. So what we thought ransomware was, like traditionally ransomware looks like malware lands on a system, files gets encrypted, or ransomware notes appear, pay the ransom or lose your data. Like that model worked until it didn't. And now let's have a look like why this model is not working anymore. Obviously, like the backups get improved, incident response gets very matured now. Companies stop paying as often, An attacker needs faster, quicker, more reliable way to make a money. Um, like this topic, I can relate to so many incidents happen with me, like in a different organizations, and I can see the shift where the hackers do the ransomware attacks, and now they are doing it in a different way. I've been involved in those incidents. I was directly in contact with the hacker, and then eventually we figured out what they did and how they did it, and now we are making our system more secure. So what the traditional ransomware is replaced. There is no encryption. There is no loud malware. No obvious incident. Instead, now we see is pure data extortion. Credential abuse, cloud and SaaS exploitation, living off the Iceland attack. So they steal your information first. They've been in your system for weeks and weeks and get all the relevant information before they send you any email. Let's have a look one real life example as well. So in a real example, in an every organization uses cloud apps like email, CRM, file storage, has MFA, but not everywhere. This again, like I can relate with a lot of applications. In every organization, there are applications which are accessible to the external user, and there are applications for the internal users only. What I've seen in the past is, like just because of the regulatory things, there are some laws in Europe where employees are not bound to access the system from their mobile after working hours. So that is kind of like a one challenge to implementing MFA across all the regions. So I see like there are some applications where you have implemented MFA for some users, but not for all, and that's where it's get like really messy, and that's where the hackers gets a lot of information and enter into your system. And again, nowadays like has a good backups, and then feel ransomware safe. So that is kind of like a traditional realistic real world example looks like. So now let's have a look like what hackers do in this instance. So they obviously like bias leak credentials from an old breach, password reused, MFA not forced on SaaS, some accounts as I mentioned. So no malware, no alerts. They sneak into your system. They've been in your system for a while. Download customer data, financial reports, copies, contracts, internal emails. Once they get like a good amount of our data, and then once they own it, then one day what happened, like they send you an email, like we have a copy of your database, contracts and internal email. They send you literally a screenshot of those data as well. I have personally seen like a lot of those emails and see the data as well, which you cannot deny. Like that's your data. That's they have now. Um, so they don't do any like file encryption, system down. Uh, so these are all like kind of a past things now. In that instance, once they own your data, backups are useless. DR plans don't help. Legal, regulatory, and reputational damage is immediate. Once they, what if they leaked your data? You're gone. Like in some businesses, if I talk about like an example of Mark and Spencer, where they get hacked and a lot of like customer lost. The credit card has been compromised. That is like kind of a big thing. Like it's a reputational damage. Um, Including myself, I do a shopping online on a Mark and Spencer, but since that incident happened, I stopped using Mark and Spencer altogether. Like so that is kind of like a big thing in a real world example. Now let's have a look one case study. Like the Salesforce Vishing wave. So what they did is um, attacker did not deploy any ransomware. They used AI enhanced voice phishing to convince employees to approve the OAuth apps. And once approved, the attacker did not need malware. Like all they need is logged in into your system and then start extracting the information. Like this is the modern ransomware without any encryption. In a traditional in way might not work nowadays as well, because of like that will bring like EDR, and all the alerts get like activated as soon as you start doing something on the systems. So that's why the hackers get evolved as well. Like, and obviously like using an AI system gives the wings to it as well, legs, wings, everything, and now they can exploit like very very quickly. They don't need like weeks and months and kind of thing. It's a days and hours kind of a thing nowadays. Same kind of attack happened, like on the Jaguar Land Rover incident as well. So there are a lot of examples in a real world where nowadays it's ransomware is not about the encryption. As I mentioned, let's have a look like why this is worse than ransomware. Um, Traditionally, like when you do the ransomware, it gets loud, fast, detectable, and the modern one is like really quite slow, legitimate. Like, and the security tools are still looking for a malware, while attacker are abusing your trust. That's the reality it now is. Uh, Now let's have a look. What we need to do is, like how companies can, what companies can do to avoid this thing. MFA everywhere, not only for admin account. That I would say like as a kind of a key thing. You cannot go live with any of your application without MFA. In my previous roles, in my current role, that is kind of like thing which we are forcing on all our applications, and that's where we are working in retrospectively as well. If there is any application, we are not allowing anyone to go live without MFA, because that is kind of like a main thing. Identity and access monitoring, SaaS and API security visibility. Again, there is a concept of least privilege by default. In my every video I talked about these core design principles. I have a video on the core design principle concept, which you can watch it. It's very helpful. I give an examples on each one as well. The thing with this least privilege is, like the core concepts remain same. Either you're working in an AI environment or you're working in the traditional application. Least privilege, economy of mechanism, keep it simple, defense in depth. These concepts remain same. And especially like in terms of the least privilege, that is kind of like a big thing. What happen normally, like you give an access to someone to perform like an administrative task on the laptops, and that's it. Like you forget, or there's no record of it, like who has an administrator access, and that's where the compromise happen. So you have to make sure like you follow the principle of least privilege by default. Monitoring data access, not just the malware. um, it's a very good thing over here. Like if you only protect servers, you're already behind. Like there are so many other things you need to look into it. Servers obviously like is the one thing you can definitely need to look into it, but it is not the only thing you need yet. So from today's video, if you remember one thing, remember this: ransomware was about availability. Modern attacks are about exposure. Ransomware didn't disappear, it evolved into something quieter, smarter, and more damaging. and companies getting breached today. Um, I know one of my friend working in another company. I was talking to him earlier today, and that's where literally like this attack happened on them as well. One of their applications get attacked via the new technique. So good luck to them. But yeah, it's a really real threat. Um, so obviously I'm not saying like you don't do the traditional work like the backups and then the all the EDR and everything that should stay in place. But what I was trying to communicate is, if you're doing that stuff for the ransomware perspective, I personally don't think so you need that one. Nowadays hackers won't use that technique anymore. If this helped you understand the modern cyber attack, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you.